Factoring Polynomials with a Visual Guide. This is already part 6 of a series of videos to help students understand factoring polynomials completely. In this part of the tutorial series, we will be discussing factoring binomials na, called the difference of two squares. But before we continue, these are important concepts you might want to recall. If you need to review these topics, I suggest balikan nyo talagang i-recall yung mga yon, or if you are confident enough to skip to other parts of this video, click the links in the description below. But don't worry, we'll still try to explain some previous topics naman as we go along. Like previous parts in the series, let's review our visual guide, serving as our map in factoring polynomials. When factoring polynomials completely, the very first step is to get the GCMF. That's part 1 of this tutorial series. After that, we proceed to step 2, where we will use other techniques of factoring, depending if what is left is a trinomial, a binomial, or a polynomial with 4 or more terms. So far, we started discussing trinomials with leading coefficient equal to 1. That is part 2 of this tutorial series. Also, nag-segue tayo ng konti to factor quadratic-like trinomials here, which was discussed in part 3. And in 2 videos so far, we learned factoring trinomials of the general form, yung case na ang leading coefficient is not equal to 1. Dalawang methods ang ginamit natin dito so far. Una, ang organized listing method. Mas mahabang way, and that is part 4a. Pangalawang method, ang AC method. Mas mabilis na method, that is part 4b. Marami pang ibang methods or videos of which to be released later. Tinapos natin yung trinomials sa previous video by discussing the perfect square trinomial. All of these in the links in the description below. In this part 6, we are discussing factoring binomials already. Mas madali ang mga to kesa sa trinomials. We are currently here. Dalawang klase lang naman yan. And in this video, we are discussing the difference of two squares. It is important na balikan natin yung topic called special products. Links in the description below. Particularly, let's quickly recall yung the product of the sum and difference of the same two terms. Ang haba, no? Nakakalito yung pangalan, pero ganito lang yon. The product, ibig sabihin, ito, multiplying this binomial by this binomial, kaya product. Of the sum, ibig sabihin, yung isa sa mga factors is sum, and yung pangalawang factor is the difference. Okay? Now, paano natin gagawin yan? Take note, we have a binomial times another binomial. Therefore, to solve that, let's use the FOIL method. F stands for first. Multiplying the first terms, x times x is x squared. Next, outer ang ibig sabihin ng O. Outer are x and negative y. Therefore, x times negative y is negative xy. Next, I for inner. Ang inner natin are y and x. Therefore, it's positive xy. And L stands for last terms. Therefore, y times negative y. Positive times negative is negative. And then y times y is y squared. Now, when dealing with problems na may FOIL, always try to combine like terms. So, check nga natin, x squared may like ba siya? Wala. So, copying x squared here, we have this one. And then, usually, mga FOIL problems, we can combine outer and inner kasi they are like terms, parehong xy. In this case, we know that meron silang numerical coefficient 1. May 1 dyan. And if you notice, negative 1xy plus 1xy can be cancelled. So, wala lang yan. In the end, wala kang xy na term dito. And finally, negative y squared, we have this one. So, the product of the sum and difference of the same two terms xy is actually a binomial na. And it's equal to x squared minus y squared. Now, take note, this is also true kung sakali ang binomial natin is x minus y times x plus y. The reason is multiplication is commutative. mauna man ang plus or minus muna bago plus, they are the same. Now, of course, we know we don't have to go through this FOIL method. Masyado pa rin mahaba yan. Shortcut, recall. There are two steps. Step 1, simply square the first term. Meaning, kung titignan mo yung first term natin, x, square mo lang yun, magiging x squared. Next is subtract the square of the last term. So, subtract mo, ayan yun, subtraction, kaya minus, and then, square the last term. Ano ba yung last term? Y. Y squared. That's it. Kaya ang sagot is x squared minus y squared, which is actually related to our lesson today because this binomial is called the difference of two squares. This is the first of only two factoring techniques involving a binomial. Paano ba natin malalaman na ang isang binomial is a difference of two squares? I usually call it a dots, difference of two squares. Now, from the name itself, the first word is difference. So, pag sinabing difference, edi minus. So, in this case, if you notice, we have the minus sign. It's a difference. Next, two squares, meaning there are only two terms. Those two should be perfect squares. We know that x squared is a perfect square and also y squared is a perfect square. Therefore, this binomial result is a difference of two squares. Or sige, lista na lang din natin. How do we check if a binomial is a DOTS or dots? 1. You ask the question, is the first term A, this first term here is called A perfect square? If the answer is yes, okay na. Hindi pa. Kailangan you answer the other two questions. Number 2, is the last term C here, we call this C, a perfect square? Kapag the answer is yes, still, you're not yet done. Ultimately, kailangan you answer the third question then. Last is it a difference? So, if you answer those three with yes, then this is a difference of two squares. Working backwards, when you are given a difference of two squares, it's actually, ang factors niya are two binomials. It's actually the product of the sum and difference of the same two terms. We have to look back at our notes from the previous tutorial and recall common perfect squares na numbers. Importante yan. Examples are 1, 4, 9, and so on. At least kabisado nyo dapat yung mga yan. Pero hindi lang yung mga numbers ang importante, pati variables. Recall that ang variable is a perfect square if it has even exponents. Example, x squared, y squared, x to the 4th, x to the 6th, x to the 8th, kahit x to the 100. Sigurado kang it's a perfect square na variable kasi the exponent is even. Now, recalling also to get the square root of variables, you simply divide the exponents by 2. Example, square root of x squared is x to the 1 kasi 2 divided by 2 is 1. Again, y squared, the square root of that is y to the 1 or simply y because 2 divided by 2 is 1. Another, square root of x to the 4th is equal to x squared kasi 4 divided by 2 is 2. Continuing, 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and so on. Okay, we're ready for some examples. How do we factor the difference of two squares? Kailangan muna natin ilista na ba yung technique natin ng factoring sa difference of two squares. Now, let's say you're given x squared minus y squared. We know from our previous slides that the factors are the quantity x plus y times the quantity x minus y. So, gusto kong tandaan natin kapag nakakita kayo ng difference of two squares like this one, the very first thing that you should think of is plus, minus. Yan kaagad ang nasa isip. Memorize nyo yan. Pwede ring minus plus. And then after that, get the square root of this x squared, it's x. Copy x. And then get the square root of this y squared, y. Copy y. And you're done. Now, another thing that you should also always consider is this can only work if it's a difference. Okay? Kapag sum of two squares, naku, hindi ganito ang factors niyan. Example, x squared plus y squared, wala pong factors yan. In fact, it cannot be factored. Ang tawag actually dyan, it's a prime polynomial. Parang may mga numbers, hindi na pwedeng i-factor. Ang tawag, prime numbers. Kapag may mga polynomials na hindi pwedeng i-factor, they are called prime polynomials. Okay? So, here are the examples. Is the given binomial a dots or a difference of 2 squared? If it is, factor it. Let's look at example number 1. Check natin. Buti na lang, meron tayong question dito. Is the first term a perfect square? Is 25x squared a perfect square? Number 25, perfect square. X squared, ang exponent niya 2, even number, it's a perfect square. First question, check. Second question, is the last term a perfect square? Of course, 1 is a perfect square. And finally, is it a difference? Yes, all the answers to the questions are yes, therefore it's a perfect square. How do we factor then? Oh, katulad ng sinabi natin kanina, first thing on our mind is plus, minus. So, ang gagawin ko, if I were you, ilalagay ko kaagad, ready na yung mga binomials natin. Para mas mabilis, lalagyan ko kaagad ng plus and then minus. After, square root of 25, it's 5. Kopya, 5. Square root of x squared, x. Kopya, x. And then finally, yung second term, square root of 1, 1. Kopya, 1. And of course, we can check by using the FOIL method. But this is already the answer. Ang dali, no? Now, again, if you are wondering, you can also write as an answer yung baliktad niyan. Because multiplication is commutative, we can also write 5x minus 1 times 5x plus 1. Either of the two. Okay? Okay, let's try example number 2. First, is it a dots? Check natin. 9. Is 9 a perfect square? Yes, it is. Next, is x to the 4th y a perfect square? X to the 4th is a perfect square because the exponent 4 is an even number. Ang problema is itong y. Y is not even yung exponent niya. Bakit hindi even ang exponent? Take note that the exponent of y is 1. Therefore, the first term is not a perfect square. Therefore, can we factor it? Hindi po. So, lalagyan ko dito, it's not a difference of 2 squares. Okay, number 3. Let's check. First term, is 144 a perfect square? Kabisado natin, dapat yes. The square root of that is 12. Okay, how about the variable? M to the 6, is this a perfect square? Yes, because the exponent is even. Okay, how about the next variable? N squared, is that a perfect square? Of course, because the exponent is 2. Therefore, number 1, check. The first term a, the 144m to the 6n squared, is a perfect square. Next question. Is the last term c a perfect square? Sir, ang laki. Kabisado mo rin dapat yan. Alam mo that 625 is, ang square root niya is 25. 25 times 25 is 625. Okay, is the last term c a perfect square? Yes, it is. And lastly, is it the difference? Of course it is. Therefore, this binomial is a difference of 2 squares. Kayang-kaya natin dapat i-factor. Ano na nga ang first thing on our mind kapag nagfa-factor tayo ng difference of 2 squares? It's plus, minus. So, lalagay ko na kagad dito. Plus, minus. Okay. Next, square root of 144. It's 12. Copy, 12. Square root of m to the 6. It's m to the, anong square root ng m to the 6? 6 divided by 2 is 3. Copy, m cubed. And then, square root of n squared is n. Copy, n. Finally, square root of the last term here, 625, is 25. Copy, 25. There you go. Pwede mo again i-check by using FOIL method. Outer and inner will be cancelled and magiging ganito yung product natin. Okay, last, let's try. Is this a difference of two squares? Oh, from the name itself, para hindi mo na kailangan ng questions dito na list. So, difference, is it a difference? Yes, it is. How about 49? Is that a perfect square? Yes, it is. Ang problema is 18. Again, it's not a perfect square. Kung hindi perfect square ang ating first term, therefore, this binomial, unfortunately, is not a difference of two squares. So you cannot factor it using that technique. Okay, so we're now ready for some exercises. You can pause this video now, answer these questions. Kayang-kaya niyo yan? Go! Here are the answers. Nakuha ba? I hope hindi kayo nalito sa number 4. 25 here is a perfect square. That is, kung numerical coefficient siya. Pero 25 here is an exponent, not the numerical coefficient. Therefore, kailangan even number siya para the first term is a perfect square sana. It is a common mistake that we should be aware of. A perfect square exponent does not necessarily make the term a perfect square. For us to be sure na naintindihan natin ang difference of two squares, let's compare it with our previous topic. Perfect square trinomial versus the difference of two squares. Ano bang pagkakaiba nila? Okay. From the name itself, una, perfect square trinomial, expect that it's a trinomial. Dito, kapag difference of two squares, since the terms are two perfect squares, dalawa lang ang terms, it's a binomial. Now, what does a perfect square trinomial look like? Review na naman tayo. Aside from being a trinomial, recall, we have to answer these three questions. How do we check? Is the first term a perfect square? Get the square root of that. Ano bang square root ng x squared? It's x. So let me write square root as a shortcut. Okay. Next question. Is the last term c a perfect square? Ano bang square root ng y squared? Y. So lalagay natin dito as a guide, dapat may square root siya. And by answering these two questions, sigurado na ba tayo sa PST? No, recall. Ang gagawin natin is check pa the middle term. And that is double the product of the first and this the square root of the last term. Now, check natin. Is 2 times x, ito yon, times y, ito yon, equal to our middle term? In this case, no. Bakit? Pwede naman kasi that the square root of y squared is the negative of y. So this can be the negative of y, therefore, equal na. So reminder, hindi lang dapat perfect square, kailangan double the product of the square roots ito. Now, anong sagot pag ganon? Easy. Get this, yun na yung terms natin, and then quantity squared. Of course, kaya nga perfect square trinomial, kaya yung factors are the same. Meaning, ito can be rewritten as x plus y times x plus y. Kaya nga perfect square, di ba? Ito can be rewritten as x minus y times x minus y. Kaya nga perfect square because their factors are the same. Meanwhile, sa difference of two squares, basta nakakita ka ng x² minus y², difference, perfect square. Ito, perfect square yon from the name itself. Tapos difference. Ibig sabihin, ano ang first thing on your mind? Ilalagay natin dito. Kapag nakakita, it's plus, minus. Ang factor niya, same two terms, pero plus, minus. Or pwede ring baliktad, minus, plus, because multiplication is commutative. Okay, let's try these examples. Let's identify whether the polynomial is either a perfect square trinomial, a difference of two squares, or neither. If it is factorable, kung PST siya or DOTS, factor it. Let's look at number 1. We have 4x² minus 81. Definitely, it's not a trinomial. Wala na yung perfect square trinomial. Ang chance niya, is it a difference of two squares? So, we know from the name itself, is it a difference? Yes, it is. Next, is this a perfect square? Yes, it is. Is 81 a perfect square? Yes, it is. Therefore, it's a difference of two squares. So, let me check that. Now, how do we factor this again? Remember, the first thing on our mind kapag difference of two squares is, ano na nga yun from the previous slide? It should be plus, minus. Automatic yan. Pwede ring minus plus, kahit anong mauna. So, what is the square root of 4x²? It's 2x. Copy 2x. What's the square root of 81? 9. Copy 9. And we're done. Okay? Okay. Problem number 2. We have a binomial. Hindi pwedeng perfect square. Trinomial yan. Hindi naman trinomial yan. Therefore, ang chance niya is difference of two squares. Check natin. Is it a difference? Yes? Minus. Okay. Next, is this a perfect square? Yes, square root niya is 11. How about this one? Is this a perfect square? Yes, because the exponents are both even. Therefore, it's a difference of two squares. How do we answer that? How do we answer this? What's the first thing on our mind from the previous slide? It should be plus, minus, or minus plus. Doesn't matter. So, what's the square root of x to the fourth? X squared. Copy x squared. Pero may kasama pa yung first term. Anong square root ng y squared? It's y. Copy y. Second term, anong square root ng 121? Memorize dapat natin, 11. Copy 11. Therefore, these are the factors of this difference of two squares. Again, reminder, let me check. I almost forgot. It's a difference of two squares. Always remember then that you can always check by using FOIL method. Multiply them to check whether your answer is correct or not. Third example, 49m to the 6 n squared plus 84m cubed n plus 36 ang haba-haba. Okay, it's not a difference of two squares kasi pang binomial lang yon. Hopefully, it's a perfect square trinomial. Bakit? Take note, look at the numerical coefficient of this, 49. Look at the numerical coefficient of this, 36. Imagine kung trinomial yan, the leading coefficient is not equal to 1. Mag-organized listing ka. Good luck sa'yo. Tapos na ang high school life mo, hindi mo pa tapos. Solve yan. Okay? Or kapag ikaw nag-AC method, good luck pa rin, 49 and 36 AC. Nako, hopefully, perfect square trinomial siya kasi may shortcut tayo. Sige, let's try. So, 49, is it a perfect square? Yes, it is. Ang square root niyan is 7. M to the 6, is it a perfect square? Yes, because the exponent is even divided by 2, m cubed. Square root of n squared, n, easy. Perfect square ang first term. May pag-asa. 36. Let's see, is this a perfect square? Yes, it is. Square root is 6. Now, hindi pa tayo tapos. Check pa natin yung middle term. Let's cross our fingers. How do we do that? Is it double the product of these two square roots? So let me write 7m cubed n times 6. Okay, ito ba equal doon? Subukan natin. 7, variables muna tayo para exciting. M cubed n, pareho. Now, the number 7 times 6 is 42. 42 times 2, it's 84. Yeah, baby. It is a PST. Imagine, pag ikaw nag-organize listing o kaya nag-AC method, buti na lang, it's a PST. Ang daling kunin ang factors. And that is, di ba ito lang yun? Meaning, kopya na lang tayo. We have 7m cubed n and then plus 6. Tapos, square mo lang. Yan na yung sagot. So that's the benefit kung perfect square trinomial. Kahit malaki, hopefully if it's a perfect square, kayang-kaya nating i-factor. Okay, last. X to the 8 minus 20x to the 4th minus 100. Okay. Again, goodbye tayo sa dots because definitely hindi binomial yan. Hopefully it's perfect square trinomial na naman. Check the first term. First term is x to the 8. May square root ba yan? Meron. So, the square root is just x to the 4th. Divide by 2 yung exponent. How about yung 100? Does it have a perfect square? Oops. Is it a perfect square, I mean? Oops. Meron tayong importanteng sign. Negative. It's not positive. Kung negative yan, perfect square ba? A perfect square is not ever a negative number. Therefore, hindi siya perfect square. Therefore, it's neither a PST nor a difference of two squares. So, hindi mo pwedeng i-factor using any of these two methods. Okay, we're now ready for your exercises. Pause this video now. Solve this. Go. Here are the answers. I hope na master natin ang concepts with our exercises. See you on the next video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Happy solving!